The supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis are known as the rotator cuff muscles. Together, they encompass, and therefore stabilize, the glenohumeral joint. All of the rotator cuff muscles are very accessible. The chunky supraspinatus is located in the supraspinous fossa, deep to the trapezius's upper fibers. Its belly runs underneath the acromion and attaches to the humerus's greater tubercle.
4 muscles that stabilize the glenohumeral or shoulder joint. Big job, very important. Let's get a handle on them. I'm going to begin with the supraspinatus. There you can see that small rotator cuff muscle that sits right off the top of the shoulder. And probably the easiest way to get a handle on it is to find that spine of the scapula here that runs at an angle up toward the acromion. And if I let my fingers slide superior into the supraspinous fossa, there I can feel, deep to those fibers of the trapezius, the supraspinatus belly right there. And as I follow it laterally, it gets a little thinner and a little more tendinous, and there it passes underneath the acromion to attach to that greater tubercle of the humerus here, deep to the deltoid. So if I want to feel the supraspinatus contract, I'm going to just ask my partner to just try to abduct your shoulder a little bit, press against my hand, and there, deep again to those trapezius fibers, that muscle, it's a small little guy, definitely contracts and relax. And there it definitely softens up. Now, finally, to shorten or lengthen the supraspinatus, I can come over to the side and I can shorten the supraspinatus by abducting the shoulder, and I can lengthen it by bringing the arm back to the side of the body, adducting the shoulder.
The flat, convergent belly of the infraspinatus is located in the infraspinous fossa. Most of its belly is superficial, with the medial portion deep to the trapezius and a lateral portion beneath the deltoid. The teres minor is a small muscle squeezed between the infraspinatus and teres major. It is located high in the axilla and can be challenging to grasp.
So now let's isolate the second and third rotator cuff muscles, the infraspinatus and the teres minor. So let's begin with the infraspinatus. The easiest way to find its belly is to isolate the 3 bony landmarks that surround it. That would include the spine of the scapula here, the medial border of the scapula here, there's the inferior angle, and then the lateral border of the scapula here. And if I set my fingers along these 3 landmarks, they sort of form a bit of a triangle. And that's where that infraspinatus belly is going to be before all the convergent fibers come this way to pass underneath the deltoid and attach at that greater tubercle of the humerus. So if I want to see it engage, I'm going to ask my partner to just simply raise his elbow up just a little bit off the table. Great. And there we can see a nice example of the infraspinatus right there, right in between those landmarks. Here we can see a bit of the teres major. Here's some of that posterior deltoid. And there we can see some of the fibers of the trapezius. Go ahead and relax. So I'm just going to set my fingers right in that triangle and roll across the fibers of the infraspinatus. It has a very different feel than the supraspinatus we were feeling before, which was a little more bulky and more malleable. Good, and I can follow this laterally, again, as it passes underneath the deltoid and becomes more tendinous right there. So there's our infraspinatus. Next to it is going to be the teres minor again. There you go. And for the teres minor, I'm going to just locate the lateral border of the scapula again. Just mark that out. And right along this pathway is going to be 2 teres muscles, the teres major, and then just above it, the teres minor. Now the teres major is going to be much larger, as its name insinuates, and I can just get my fingers on that here, on my partner, and then I'm going to leave my fingers just above it and roll across the small teres minor. So the teres minor sits between the teres major and the infraspinatus. And if I ask my partner to just laterally rotate his shoulder joint, just go ahead and press your hand, the back of your hand into mine. Great. There we can see the infraspinatus again contract, and right next to it is this small teres minor. Now what's curious is, notice that the teres major, it's not doing anything because it does not laterally rotate the humerus. But if I ask him to go the other way, go ahead and just medially rotate, wow, look who shows up. The teres major now definitely engages, but the infraspinatus and teres minor are relaxed. Good. So they're antagonists on rotation of the shoulder. So if we wanted to shorten the teres minor and infraspinatus, we can adduct the shoulder, and to lengthen them, we can abduct the shoulder like so. So lengthened and shortened. Good. So now for our fourth rotator cuff muscle, I'm going to turn my partner sideline to locate the subscapularis.
The deep subscapularis, located on the scapula's anterior surface, is sandwiched between the subscapular fossa and serratus anterior muscle, with only a small portion of its muscle belly accessible.
So here's what we're going to do. First, I'm just going to scoop up my partner's arm and just pull it forward, which brings the scapula off the rib cage like so, opening up the axilla or armpit. And what this affords is, now I can sink my thumb into the axilla and access part of that anterior surface of the scapula. But in order to do that, I need to just avoid some of this tissue here, and that's the latissimus dorsi and the teres major. So instead of trying to sink my thumb through this tissue, I'm going to just put my thumb right here in front of it, and then very slowly, with my partner's breath, just sink my thumb slowly into the axilla until I find myself bumping into the anterior surface of that scapula, right about there. And if I just want to check if I'm on the muscle, I'm going to ask my partner to try to medially rotate his shoulder. So I'm going to ask him to try to swing his hand this way. Great. And relax. And do that about, 20%. Great. Just a nice small contraction, and there, underneath my thumb, I feel the subscapularis engage. Good. And relax. And also, while I'm here, I can explore moving the shoulder to get in even a little bit further. I'm going to slowly bring my thumb out, and there we go. And now let's try to find this from a supine position. I can do pretty much the same thing. I'm going to just bring the arm up, hold it like so. I'm going to notice that all of this tissue here is the latissimus dorsi, part of that teres major. And I'm going to set my thumb right into that space. And then mobilizing the shoulder, I'm going to slowly sink my thumb into the axilla, just sort of following my partner's breath. Because this is someone's armpit, it's a little tender. And right there, I feel sort of a wall that is that anterior surface of the scapula. And if I ask my partner to try to medially rotate his shoulder like that, great. Underneath my thumb, there's a very solid contraction. Good, and relax. And it's not really like a big tubular muscle or anything. It's more of like just a flat wall of muscle laying against the scapula. Good. And that is another way you can access some of that subscapularis in a supine position. And finally, if we want to lengthen the subscapularis, I can laterally rotate the shoulder, and to shorten it, I can medially rotate the shoulder. So lengthen and shorten. And there's some information to get you started to locating and palpating the four muscles that stabilize the glenohumeral joint, the rotator cuff muscles.